Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Something Super Spiritual. I want to start off by saying we have somebody, a total breath of bright white light with us today. Derek Jameson, I discovered you through a friend who had a session with you that just blew her mind energetically. And I was like, I got to talk to this guy. Um, so she got us hooked up. We've been playing phone tag for about 3 months now, and here we are. And I'm so glad that you're with me. Let me read your little bio first because there's so much in this. So you guys, Derek Jameson is a spiritual coach, a QHHT past life regression practitioner, and musician based out of Los Angeles, California. He merges a history in entertainment and fitness with spirituality to assist people along their awakening path. With a focus on consciousness and human potential, Derek aims to activate the power within all who seek a deeper understanding of life's mysteries. Yes. More, please. Derek, welcome to Something Super Spiritual. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm so excited. I feel activated already.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are so many directions to go to with you and your work and your story and who you are and where you're what you're doing. You're doing so many things. Uh Talk to me about, well, has spirituality always been on the forefront of your mind? Like as a child, were you talking to dead loved ones, spirits, seeing things?
I think yes, but I forgot. And my it wasn't until I finally fully came out and told my mom, I was like, this is what's happening. Like there's angels and archangels and beings and all of these things happening. And I can't be afraid of it. I have to just be open with you and honest. She said, well, you actually used to talk to people when you were a kid, and we were going to go get you help, but we didn't. But she said we were going to, and I was like, you mean you've been sitting on this for this long? And because I had no idea. But also, I think that when we go into a place of fear, when certain things happen that create a fear response in us, our brain does that protective mechanism and
Yeah.
shuts that part down. And I became very fearful of that when I was a kid because I knew how real it was. And I think it was around when I was in middle school, we had a metaphysical store at the end of our street in San Jose. I'm from San Jose, like Los Gatos, Campbell, like right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so it was really beautiful there, really nice. And we had a metaphysical store right at the end of the street. Right next to it was a card store, but I always wanted to go into the metaphysical store. I didn't understand what it meant to me because I was in junior high, but I would go in there and I would just be like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to read these books. I just want to be in this
Yeah.
energy, in this
Totally.
space. Uh-huh. So, but I shut it all off because fearful things happen. And when I was a teenager, I worked at Paramount's Great America, which is a theme park in Northern California. And I worked a Halloween event. Someone taught us how to read tarot cards, like, and palm reading. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds cool. But when I did that, it was so innate and natural in me that I could pick up on information for everybody that was waiting. But imagine at a Halloween event where people want to be scared and
Yes.
have fear, and that's how they enter it, and having a line of people. Well, I took on all of their spirits, all of their stuff, and I would have nightmares and nightmares and nightmares. So I shut it off as a teenager, and it just channeled through me through music after that until I welcomely opened it back up,
Yeah.
and then here we are. So
Wow. Okay. So how long have you been working with it actively then? Like proactively working with
proactively, I opened it back. I was playing music in Dallas for a singer. I was playing the piano for her, and we went to a museum. When was this? It was the Dallas like Contemporary Museum, and they had ancient Greek stuff in there. And I was like, oh, I gotta go see it. And so when I went over there, my body tightened up, my heart squeezed, I couldn't breathe, and I was looking at fourth century gold from ancient Greece, and I was like, something's happening, something's happening. And the friend I was playing for, she's a big artist in the dance scene, like all the big festivals. And she goes, we've been friends since we were 18 because we were characters together at the theme park. And she goes, this stuff has always happened to you. And I was like, oh my God. And it was like everything in that moment flashed. Every weird cool, spiritual, synchronistic. It was like, it was like the download I needed to step into it. So then I think that was 2016, maybe 2016. I think somewhere right in there, somewhere 2016, 17. And then I said, okay, I got this, I got the calling, as you know, Sister Mary Clarence was talking about in Sister Act, the
Yes.
calling. And I was like, oh yeah, the calling. Yes, that's what I think about. I got the calling and I said, okay, I will step into this, but it must be from light. It must be from angels. I am ready in the ways that you all think that I'm ready. And from the moment I said, I am ready, it was like the floodgates opened and it was a like, okay, now you got boot camp. And like, it was wild every single day.
I just got
Everything.
chills. I just got
Yeah.
chills. You said all that because that's the truth. When you say okay, it's true. Boot camp hits you in the face and you're off.
Yeah. Yep. I was like, oh, look, a spirit friend. And then I'd be like, cool, that's who I'm going to work with. Cool. They look awesome. And then the next day would be a new one. And then the next day, a new one. And then the next day, and then the next day. And then the apartment that I lived in West Hollywood, as we talked about earlier, had a portal in it that I wasn't aware of. And the only reason that I know is because my partner's best friend at the time, her boyfriend lived in the same exact apartment, and we didn't know until after. And he was part of the dark arts and dark magic. And
Mm,
so there was a portal open. And my ex messages me. He went through a coma. My ex messages me. And since he had his coma and came out of it, his psychic abilities were like blasted open. He's like, there's an opening, there's a tear in your room, in your house where your dog goes. He likes to go there. You'll know because he likes to go there. And he's like, there's an opening. And I was all, yeah, I know. Because whatever that opening is brings anything and everything into my space. But I know that it was all part of my development and my
yeah.
boot camp.
Mhm.
So it's okay.
Wow. I love it when things like that happen. I
Yeah.
mean, through a friend, through a friend, through a friend, coming circling back, and then like the synchronicities, just wow.
It was pretty powerful. And I was like, see, I'm meant to be in this space right now. And when I was ready, I sealed it up. I worked with it. I sealed it up. I had to do a lot of, and I had to learn a lot in the moment of how to handle challenging spiritual energies. And I'm talking about from, darker polarized energies to beings that are not from this world and all of everything in between. It was like, you have to learn on the job kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I went for it, and that's where I developed really cool skills, and without it I wouldn't be able to be where I am.
Mhm.
So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. More, please.
Yeah.
I totally get that. And it's true. This work comes with, well, it's all on the job training, It's it's not, you can sit in a classroom, and you can read all the books all day long. But yeah, those experiences, those mystical experiences cannot be cannot be fully processed on your insides without truly experiencing them. And the magic in all of that, it's just amazing. Speaking of that whole darker um side, I had an experience. I opened up with Reiki, so I became attuned to the Reiki in 2006, and so the side effect for me is it just ignited all the spiritual senses over that weekend, like kablam. And so I really thought I was losing my mind. I mean, I didn't know what was going on. I was sensing things, seeing things, hearing things. My dreams took an entirely new level, and I've always been a very vivid dreamer. Um, and my Reiki master walked me through it, and got me started back then. So I mean, and that's amazing. But during one of my Reiki treatments, I was working on this guy who, you know, I don't know if he was diagnosed with anything, but I think that he had mental challenges. I think that he might have struggled with maybe, you know, like those big diagnoses like bipolar or borderline personality or schizophrenia, you know, something like that. A real sweetheart, and I loved the guy, but I was working on him one day, and you know, I was at his head, my hands over this part of his over his head, and all of a sudden, you know, my eyes are closed, and all of a sudden, it was like a rubber band snapped. That was the energy, and that was the sound that I heard. It was like that snap. And all of a sudden, there was a black figure with red eyes standing right next to me, staring at me so mad. I mean, just mad. Like, how dare you? It felt like this. How dare you invade my space? And how now look at what we and I was like, in that flash second, and I don't know who instilled this in me. Nobody said, and when this happens, call on so and so and so and so and so and so. It just happened. And suddenly I called on Archangel Michael to come take him to his most right and perfect place. It, whatever they, I don't know their pronouns, but I knew that they were unhappy pronouns.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it was gone. But when it happened, like he jolted, his body jolted when that rubber band snapped, you know? And yeah, I mean, and I wasn't afraid. It was just like it just kind of it was what it was. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I've had like so in past life regression work, it's a deep state. So QHHT is quantum healing hypnosis technique. So it's a deeper level than just like if I there's other all kinds of past life regression work.
Yeah.
This one I chose specifically because of the level of healing physically, emotionally, mentally, spirit, all the levels, all your
Yes.
bodies.
Yep, yep.
And so I've had a few sessions that where not only was there energy there that shows up, but the energy would channel through the person. This does not happen often, but it has happened where I'll be with somebody and they'll resist whatever they are seeing. And then an entity will channel through them because their field is so open, because they are in a deep state. It doesn't create fear in me, just the same way that you were saying that there was no fear for you. I'm like, yeah, we hold the fort. We see the grander perspective. We're able to create that energetic container
Right.
where I'm just like, I've seen too many beings, dealt with too many things to have a fear around those things. It's more of an annoyance than anything, right? Like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And so this, I mean, I've had multiple experiences, but one being came through and just breathed into the guy. He was like, he took a huge breath and then he like sighed it out. He was like that. And I was like, okay, somebody else is here. And I was like, who's this? And they explained, they were like, I am not this and I am not that. You cannot put a label. You cannot put a name. I am very ancient. I just am. And this being started channeling through. It was obviously darker polarized, but there wasn't a sense of fear. There was a sense of deeper, darker wisdom. And so they explained about how we have, you know, this entity explained how we have the darkness and light within us. We have the angel, the demon. We are both. And we have to be aware that we have both and then make choices based upon that total awareness.
Yes.
And he explained that in this particular situation, the person that I was regressing didn't want to see what they were seeing. So the guy kept jumping out because he didn't want to know that he had done dark things to people in another lifetime. So every time the higher beings were showing him, you have to see this, he would jump out into another life to go experience something else. And finally, that's when that being came through and be like, he doesn't want to see this. He doesn't want to know that he had done this. But I said, okay, well, we have to access that part or he's going to keep going. And we're here. We're not doing this for nothing. So it's time we go back into that space. And he did end up having to look at it and face that part of himself where he did dark things. And that was a wild situation, a wild session, because it being, you know, his field was so open. He was so trusting with me that the entity could come through and work through his field to like make this happen. And that's not the first time it's happened. So it's very interesting. I don't have fear around it. I just ask that everything goes back to where it came and I clear the space and, you know, do all the magics.
So how did that affect him moving forward then after awareness and acknowledgement?
Afterwards, a lot of people come out of experiences like that and they're trying to unpack it all in the moment. And I'm like, you're not going to be able to do that. You need to listen to your recording when you take it home and then really sit with it because it's going to come in layers over the years. So I never expect somebody to just get it right away.
Yeah.
However, he understood what the message was and he knew that he doesn't want to see that part, and that's where a lot of his anger comes from, suppressing
Oh,
that
sure.
part. And he was because he would be angry about a lot of things, and so he acknowledged it. And the moment that someone says, oh, this is, they sit in that safe space with you and they can be honest about the situation, in that moment, that's the activation, that's the new start, that's the new beginning. But they have to water that tree.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes down to. And that guy held on to a lot of anger for a while. He recently came back around to me like a month ago, and he acknowledged all that anger and said, I would take that out on you because I was in this place. And I'm like, I know, it's okay. I know your process. Like, I don't take it personally. It's not, but nothing is about me.
Yeah.
So you had to get the awareness, and then you had to really love into it and massage love into that whole experience so that you can actually love all parts of yourself. And now you're here. Yeah, so beautiful.
That is so beautifully said.
Hmm.
To massage love into that. Yeah. Yeah, that gave me chills. It's just
Hmm.
that's this doing the work. Doing the work is really, really hard work. It is
Yeah.
acknowledging that which we, have been programmed to turn away from, and not acknowledge that darkness on our inside. And it it for him to have that awareness of his anger and where it was being placed and why, only to recognize, that it really wasn't you. It was just, him on his insides just going splat for a minute and,
Yeah.
and you being there to take it on for him in the moment, knowing it wasn't about you. That's just, yeah, that's healing. That's a healer.
I think that's why I can work with a lot of people is because I will and I remind people of this. I'm like, okay, you're gonna tell me these things, even friends or close people, and I say, okay. I was like, I'm not gonna see it from down there.
Mhm.
I'm going to go to the grander design and picture. I mean, everything I study is about unity consciousness and higher levels of states of consciousness. So I'm not going to approach it from down there when you tell me something.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to scan way back and see this bigger thing. So anytime people go through things, I go, oh, that is coming forward so that they can love into that and alchemize it. And I just see that every time with people. And I think that that's also why people will come to me for just advice or sessions, for whatever it is. And that's also what I try to do in music is like access the human experience, but then also scan back at the same exact time so we can look at the grander design.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, okay, so you brought up your QHHT. I love Dolores Cannon, by the way. Um,
Dodo. I call her Dodo.
oh,
Oh, Dodo.
I love that. So when did Dolores come online with you then? Like, was that your like initial step into this world, or did it start with reading tarot and then, one thing leads to another?
Well, okay, so the tarot stuff happened a long time ago, and I was very connected to ancient Egypt, and I just knew, I mean, when Stargate came out, my body vibrated
Oh,
at the theater. And when the Akhenaten, because people don't understand that mask is the Akhenaten face. And they don't explain that. They just say, here's the mask opening of the thing. Nah, 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 nah. And so when I rewatch it, I'm like, that's Akhenaten. There's a whole thing going on with this. It activated my timelines in connection with Akhenaten. I've been to Egypt twice. So I was in Egypt on 9/11. I was at the Temple of Sobek when the planes hit here. And I was literally at the Temple of Deep-Seated Fears when 9/11 happened, and I was 19. And And then
Wow.
I went back in 2019 to go back, and that's when I went into Tutankhamun's tomb, and I came out vibrating again. I'm like, okay, I get it. I have this connection with the Akhenaten and Tutankhamun and that whole situation. And I knew that I have these deeper connections, but it wasn't until I said I was ready, like that time when I said, I'm ready, let's see it,
Mhm.
that I was drawn to go to an Akashic Records meditation at Liberate, which is now closed in Hollywood. And I went to that just going, okay, well, let's just see what happens. And the first thing, it was a light meditation. A light meditation for me, I saw immediately. The first thing it scans down as soon as we end up in that space is I see this like body. I don't see her face, but I see her body because I'm looking down at my body. And I was just like, oh, and I saw these slender, beautiful, light, delicate fingers. And I was just like, oh, this is actually happening. Okay, don't question it. Just go with it. Just go with it because you'll block the whole thing. And then I was seeing myself at the Nile River. I was hot. I was a hot ass Egyptian girl. And I was like, damn, she is fine. And so I was at the baby blessing at the Nile River. I was at the temples. I was at all of the things. And then it says like, go see where you live. And then I'm looking and I was like, what is this rickety old place? Like it had an old table, not like the palace tables that I was seeing in the visions. And I was just like, what is it? And I see an old man at the end of the table. It was a longer table, an old man with bald hair just kind of eating like this. And but that ended up being that grandpa was my grandma in the Japanese side in this lifetime. It's the same dynamic, but it was my
Right.
grandpa in that lifetime, which is also explaining why she had the more masculine kind of impulse in this lifetime. And she was the only one in my family that I had seen in that whole experience. And so I was like, wait, why was I in an old rickety house in a shakalak next to like over here when I was at the temples? I was like, I'm a temple girl. And and then I asked, I forget how found this information, but the spirits explain that yes, you were a seer for the royals and and you would be invited to all of the things. You were part of the temple, you were part of the palace, but you lived next to in like a smaller house. So when I was in Egypt in 2019, we were by the Saqqara pyramids and the guide was walking and she kept saying words like frequency or the people are ready now. And I was like, oh, she knows. Okay, I'm going to talk to her. I said, hey, what where did the psychics and the seers and the people who are helping the temples, there's a spirit up there. I keep looking up there because I can see a spirit friend up there. And I said, hello. And I said to her, where did the seers where did they live? And she goes, oh, they live next to the palace. They live next to it in like a smaller house. And that's all. I turned to my partner. I was like, dude, that's exactly what I saw. Like, it's true. Okay, it's validated by me asking where did they live, what was their conditions. So that whole awareness set me on the path of past lives, knowing that I've done this in another lifetime, that I was part of this, which by the way, the Pharaoh in that lifetime is now one of my very good friends who's a very well-known shaman in this lifetime.
Oh,
And yes, I'm telling you, the way things come back around and is insane. My partner was a guard in that lifetime as well. And that's why also my shaman friend really trusts this person
oh
that I'm
my
with.
gosh.
It is so wild how things layer in over time. But that's really how it set off. And I was like, okay. And then that person that led that was part of QHHT as a practitioner. So I explored it. I was like, this is it. Everything in my being says I'm supposed to do this. And that's what I did. And I went to Hawaii and we did the practicals there in Kona. And I mean, from the first session I did, it was game on,
Yeah.
wild experiences. So
It's
much.
so awesome. I mean, to look back at these experiences through this spiritual awareness, as it starts and it hits us the way that it did for you, all those deep knowings about the with how Egypt touched you. it's so cool. Synchronicity permeates everything all the time. And to have that antenna up and experience that magic is it's everything. It's the validation, the synchronization, it's amazing. And I love how you recognize that the people in your life where they were back then. So when you became a practitioner with the QHHT, I imagine that all of that started to clear up even more, like through your experiences of, well, I suppose practicing with it and experiencing what it is to go under and then what it is to actually facilitate. And yeah, talk a little bit about that.
That was the doing QHHT, and if people have a desire to learn how to do that, I recommend it because not even if you don't practice it as a career, what it does is it opens up these channels of your own Akashic records and you start downloading your own abilities every time you do it. You gain a new like elevation in consciousness. You gain new information about truths from other realms, lifetimes, realities, and the person's receiving a deep healing, but so are you. And you're receiving a DNA activation of those dormant codes within you that with every single person. And every single person you do, it's also a soulmate of some sort. And so that's why they find you. That's why you have connections with this person. And so when you do that, you're activating that timeline. And sometimes the thing that they're experiencing, you're the person that's the other character or the thing, which is why the healing has to happen with you too. And I've noticed that, and I will get the information because I'm open now that when my field is open like that and a person's in and I get information and they're speaking, I was like, I was there. Oh my gosh, that's me. But they won't know. They can't know that it was me, but I know it was me. And then other people are experiencing, like, for example, there's a healer who makes these incredible mala beads. And she went in and saw the Atlantean timeline immediately. And she was wailing, crying in her regression because she was like, you tried to stop us. You tried, and they'll flat out be like, you were there. And they were like, we didn't listen. We didn't listen. You tried to warn us. You tried to tell us that this was going to happen, but we didn't listen. And so in the moment they're wailing and crying or pulling that information forward, they're also healing it.
Yeah.
And I get to try again, almost. You know what I mean? My soul or my soul fragments in this Derek embodiment get to try and help again. Whether
Yeah.
or not they listen is going to be up to them. And some of them don't. Some of them choose. I've had some people to choose self-serving paths. And then I also have to deal with the guilt of that. Like if I activate somebody and then they choose, I can't be responsible for that.
Right.
So you have so many different levels of what QHHT can do for you and for others,
Mhm.
and how it awakens your own Akashic record information, DNA activation. And sometimes a person is so deep that during this segment towards the end, they are bringing forward a higher energy. And sometimes the message is for you. Sometimes the message is for me. And I'm so open. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm open. It doesn't mean I have to accept it, but I will be open to receive. And so people tell me and they'll explain what I need to know and where I'm at in my progression through a higher guidance that's coming through the person. It's so cool. So it's so many levels, you know?
Yeah. So
So
are the
much.
Akashic records part of the QHHT work, or did that just kind of happen for you?
I did Akashic Records certification and study separately.
Okay.
So like that study where I could read someone Akashic Records, that happened on a separate path.
Yeah.
QHHT is just the past life regression, quantum
That's
healing
what I thought.
hypnosis.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I keep them separate for sessions. I mean, I could open my own as I facilitate somebody's session. That way I'm most tuned into what needs to be asked or said. You know, the questions that I should do. It does help to have that,
Yeah.
but they do remain separate. But the moment I mean, people are accessing their Akashic records all the time. The moment that a person needs to go into a new job field or something and their spirit is called into something, that's them accessing their Akashic records, their soul records that give them that information that they need. You know, just people don't realize it.
Yeah,
We're
it's
all doing it.
unconscious.
It's just based off of levels of consciousness,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Um, so yeah, but I keep those two things. I try to really adhere to what I agree to with the modalities.
Yeah, yeah. What is what you know? And this is happening more and more. The more people are waking up, the more people are taking on their new role with spirit. They're acknowledging that calling that Mary Clarence Francis was her
Sister
name.
Mary Clarence.
Susan Mary Clarence, yes. Yeah, they're answering these calls and they're recognizing and waking up and they're blazing through all of these modalities, which is awesome. And people are amalgamating and taking and bridging a lot of these modalities. Um, and so that's why I asked, if you use or access the Akashic records within the QHHT at the same time. So, um, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's
I
awesome.
mean, when you do QHHT, just like you don't do a QHHT session remotely, people do it, but we make an agreement that says not to because it's out of safety. So even when I do group activations, like I'll get hired to do really cool private events for like high end or celebrity clientele for like their events and stuff.
Mhm.
And I'll do it there, but I always give a disclaimer. I'm a QHHT practitioner for past life regression. This is not a past life regression. This is a past life connection meditation. And I make sure I say a regression is much deeper. You're going to go into a deeper state of trance. We're going to go into deeper levels with that. So this isn't that. This is you getting visions and connecting into your past lives. I make sure it's super separate because that's the agreement, that I made. Sometimes with QHHT, we're just supposed to let them fully come to the awareness. But what I've found is that sometimes they see things and they don't fully understand it. That's where I will step in and go and ask questions. Be like, well, does this have a correlation to this? Like I will start to be like, okay, well, this is what I'm getting from this since they can't fully grasp why they saw what they saw.
Mhm.
I will help them along, but it's nudges because we can't be Superman and Wonder Woman. We cannot do it for the people, or else it negates the evolution of the humanity. We have to just create the beautiful display of DVDs, and they can choose what movie they want to watch.
Yes,
I
that's
went
awesome.
to DVDs, not even a streaming service, just DVDs.
It's so old school. I love it.
Well, I guess because that's more physical. So you actually have to have the physical experience. So maybe that's why I went to DVDs.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool. Okay, so what is your day like? I mean, do you work mainly with the QHHT work or like what's your main lane, I guess?
Because I've been so multidimensional in the things that I do, balancing out everything has become a very important task of mine. So sometimes I do group meditations for past life rather than just doing just one-on-one QHHT
Yeah.
sessions. For the past few months, I went through like a very physical, challenging experience. I think I mentioned it to you earlier with on November and December. I mean, that's part of the spiritual testing of last year, but I went through that. I moved. My dad got super sick with COVID, and like literally, if I didn't go up to San Jose, it was one of the like really challenging things that I've seen. So I didn't do a bunch of work during that time. I took a moment to just ground it and keep it, stable. That said, I was recording music and making music and channeling that focus. So a lot of my focus right now, up until this launch that's coming up, or this concert, I've been focusing on more music. And so that's what I've been putting a lot of my energy towards. But I'm leading teams of people for Spartan races. So for as spiritual and cosmic and Akashic that I can be, I believe in our physicality as human beings and awakening the levels of us from other lifetimes that call for strength and power and those levels. So I lead Spartan teams. And of course, that in itself is past life related from when I also used to teach teams of or warriors as a leader, as a warrior
Yeah,
leader.
totally.
And so that comes forward a lot. So all these different dimensions, I go, how can I be able to maintain all these levels? But I also work doing spiritual development coaching, Akashic Records reading, or sessions like that with clients virtually and in person. So like after this, I have someone that needs an Akashic Records reading
Mhm.
to understand and sift through some of that stuff that she's going through. But I have weekly development with people who are working on just even activating the chakras, understanding the archetypes of the tarot and
Mhm.
how it relates to their life. So it's all so many different levels. I just put them in where they fit.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. And I'm so glad you brought up your music because I was going to bring that up next is how you incorporate this output of creativity, artistry, with this music, but how that's all it just is spiritually minded and driven as this work, talk a little bit about that. I before we hit record, you and I were talking about your concert this weekend at the Viper Room in Hollywood, and I just, yeah, talk more about that, your music and the lyrics and all that good stuff.
It's funny because you bring up the Viper Room, and I've had the opportunity to play at the Viper Room and the Whiskey A Go Go. I actually used to have a residency next to the Whiskey A Go Go at the Cat Club every Monday. So I got to play on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood every last Monday of the month. But I never wanted to play the Viper Room. The energy was just something kept me away from
Mhm.
choosing that option.
Understood.
And and I just recorded this album since like September, October. And the first track, it came out of me, just divine inspiration. The song's called Take Me for Granted. And I was like, I'm gonna make a hard EDM, like a harder, darker techno EDM song. It's called Take Me for Granted. And it was about the things that I take for granted in my life. And it's about how I don't appreciate certain things in my life. It was time to face parts of myself and not act like I'm better than what I think. And so it was about that. It's also about how we allow other people to take advantage of us and we give that power away. So it's about all these different levels of take me for granted in the most basic sentence, but how you apply that in your life. I put that song out and people really connect. It's the easiest lyrics I've ever written, yet the most impactful song that people have really been into. And I was like, oh, I thought it was just a song and then two other dance songs. No, it turned into a full-fledged 12-song album. And I was like, oh, there's an album coming. Oh, this is all going to be dark. And this is not dark for its darkness sake. It's loving through the shadow aspects of ourselves. So
Right.
even the cover is red and black and like this deeper sense of, groundedness, passion, fire. But also how people that are associating that either deny their darkness are going to see the dark parts of it and think that it's dark. I want people to think that it is just darkness. But then I also want people who are ready and who have done the healing to go, oh, this is about healing. This is about deeper inner love. So all the songs, as people listen to it, are all about healing through our shadow aspects, but me honoring mine
Yeah.
and still going, that's part of me and not denying it. And it's funny, the very first song on that album is called The Power. I didn't put that one out because I release singles. That one came out with the album just on the 17th of this month. And that's the first song on the album. It's going to be the first song that I play at the Viper Room. It's called The Power. And the reason why I wrote that was because since 2007, I mean, before that, but when I said I'm open and all the beings came forward in the boot camp, I would have a lot of very, very, very challenging spiritual experiences that I would share that with people, and people could not have any idea what I was talking about. All the spiritual people I know, all of the people who do the work, I would say, oh no, there would be a being at the foot of the bed, and then they would crawl up my body and then hold me down, and I could see them. But then I would also say, oh, but there's also really angelic, beautiful creatures that stand in the room, multiple. There's all kinds of things I experience. But this one challenged me, and it was the last straw for me. And this is over years. And this entity, which was a feminine figure, she was very forceful with me in my last home. This is a new home. I just moved here. And she was very forceful with me. And even when I said, I love you and I have so much love for you. I'm giving you love. I have love for you. Either they're going to go away because they don't want that, or it's going to alchemize their and then shift them into the light. Because I send a lot of spirits that are sad or upset into the light. They'll come, they'll show me why they died or what they're sad about. I'll shift them into the light. And from that moment, I was so fed up because when I said, I have so much love for you, and then she didn't stop. And then I tried to send her in the light. She didn't stop. I called for angels. I called for archangels. I called for my gatekeeper, Olore. I called for my dogs in spirit. I called for my ancestors, my star families. I called for so many. And then no one came. And she kept trying to, like, it was like sexually forced herself on me. And I was paralyzed in my bed. And I was like, and I broke free from that. And I said, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this. And I wrote this song called The Power. And it was about breaking that whole cycle that I allowed to happen, because a level of me was allowing it to happen, going, well, this is my life. This is how it is. And I wrote this song called The Power. And I'd love for you just to hear it on your own when you now that you know the real story behind it. Other people are going to think it's about like a human being. This is about the entities that would challenge me, and demons, everything, up and down, all the different levels. And I wrote this song. I moved here. I have not gotten one of those since 2016, 17, when they were coming all the time.
Wow.
Sometime in my last apartment, I call them sex demons because they were like trying to do some weird stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Every day. Every day I would see them. I moved here, wrote that song, and I've been having peaceful sleep. I've had such clear energy. It was like the song, I was like waiting for the song to be written. He was waiting for me to put that out there and not just accept that entities want to create havoc in my life. And it was through that music. So that's why it's the first song on the album, taking that power back. And that's why it's going to be the first song I play at the Viper Room to set the energy there.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, there's just a huge level of awareness in all of that that is uh, I mean enlightening. You know what I mean? I mean enlightening in the true form of enlightenment, and doing that work and acknowledging the darkness and loving through the darkness, and you putting it to song and rhythm, and especially where you're doing it. I mean, there is a level of darkness in that whole area, but as dark as that can and is and can be, there's equally as much light. I mean, look at how much beauty comes out of Hollywood in that work. So, you are going into that darkness, being the light that you are, and shedding light and healing, and creating this level of awareness, not only starting with you, but for others, in partaking in your music and your energy, and your just being in near you. It's awesome. Thank you for doing what you do.
Oh my God, thank you. It's really, I think this is just timely to hear that reflection, right as I'm about to go do something big,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And I think that And you just kind of summed it up for me about entertainment and spirituality, all the things that you just said. And this is just such a big week because of the Grammys week. And my friend who sings on that album, her name is Jessica Hoover. She she has written Grammy nominated. She's written for the biggest artists, but like for Taylor Swift's nominated songs coming out this weekend, she's written for, and she sings on this album, and she sings the Atlantean song. And so that's her channeling those Atlantean frequencies when we opened her Akashic records,
Sure.
so that she could channel that through. So we have that huge activation of healing the Atlantean timelines, which is overlaying here, by the way, energetically. I've seen these Atlantean aspects that are here because there's so many Atlantean souls who are here. Oh, getting a huge wave through my body for that. There's so many Atlantean souls who are back. Yeah, wow. Oh
Totally.
my God.
I'm lit up. Like,
wow.
Totally.
They are strong with that one because I don't think I've said that before. I don't think I've come to that awareness before until we're sitting here activating it. And that's why the music is so important. And that's why the journey of these artists who are reclaiming it and healing it are here. And Jessica Hoover is one of them, and so she's going to sing live that night and be a part of the live activation of it. And then the next morning, I have to teach for Paramount. So Paramount Pictures has this show called Lioness, which is it's so good. It's so sexy and so good. But I get to lead a special ops class. It's called Special Ops Lioness. And I get to teach a very special class in partnership with Paramount Pictures for this show, which is also about, because I'm very strong in helping women leaders activate their healed potentials, not the wounded potentials.
Excellent.
So I get to be a part of something that's so women focused and women based, and teach that on Saturday. So this is such a huge week. So hearing you just make that reflection just like wrapped everything up for me, and actually means a lot to me just to hear that back. So thank you.
Eric, oh, thank you. I feel so honored to be having this conversation with you right as your like toe is out the door in doing all of this amazing, beautiful, big work. It's just awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm over here with my pom-poms and my cheerleaders. I mean, I've got all the support going over here for you. It's awesome. Okay, so where can people find your music? Where can people find your work? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Everything, music's on all the platforms. So if people listen to Spotify or Apple Music, it's on all of that. The album that just came out is called Synthesis. I have it's all beats though. It's going to be all dance. There's a lot of other stuff where I play the piano and sing. So if people are more into that kind of stuff, they can find that as well. But this album is called Synthesis, Spotify, Apple Music, all the things. And then if people want to follow that, because I've been posting a lot of music stuff more than spiritual drops, just because that's the focus at the moment, is at Derek Jameson, DEREK, Jameson like the liquor. And there you go.
That's awesome. I had a cat named Jameson. And I loved him. Okay, thank you so much for being here. This has just been, it's been really awesome connecting with you. Before we go though, one last piece of like words of wisdom from Derek for everybody listening and watching.
Don't be afraid of the spaces of time where it feels like nothing is happening and that there is a stagnancy, or you're in a dark place because you don't know which direction you need to go. There is always a purpose to those gaps where something is being created. There's something in the dark spaces where you can't see, where you're able to rest and you're able to build the energy for what you can't see that is being manifested. So don't be afraid of those dark places. Ask what you are being called to create within those places. It's tapping into the unified field of all that is. It's creating from darkness so that you can live the full desire of what your soul signature has come here to fulfill.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Wow. Okay, you guys, you've been watching another episode of Something Super Spiritual with the fabulous Derek Jameson. Everybody tune in to his music. That's the first thing I'm going to do when we get done here. And please come back. Let's talk more.
Absolutely. It was such a activating experience, and we can open up containers and receive information when we climb onto that vibration. So
Totally.
it's really cool.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, you guys. We'll be seeing you again next week with another amazing guest. And until then, be well. Thank you again for listening to the Something Super Spiritual podcast. If you know someone who would enjoy this episode, please do share it with a friend. For show notes, links, and to purchase a mediumship reading, my website is somethingsuperspiritual.com. You can also easily subscribe and follow the show on your favorite app, sign up for my newsletter for bonus content, and to keep the conversation going, you can easily join the Facebook community. It's all right there at the website, somethingsuperspiritual.com. Signing off for now, namaste.